After 10 years in the nursing field, Lindsay realized during the pandemic that she wanted something different.
In 2020, everything changed for me. I work in one of the most trauma level 1 hospitals. I see people die every day. So I decided to look up on Google, how can I make money? Because I didn't know anything else.
That spark led her to real estate, and she hasn't looked back.
I looked at my backyard. There's nothing that I could buy that I could put a 20% down payment for. Now I have 10 rentals and maybe 20 rentals, which will bring me $67,000 a month in cash flow. It's not cars or houses or a private jet. It's actually little things that you do have. Your partner, your family, being present for the small wins. That's actually what's important for me. Thank you for inviting me, Aaron. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I was saying before we hit record, I've known you for a while, but we've never had the opportunity to dig into your story. So selfishly, I'm excited to hear more about your background and how you got into it. So maybe let's roll back the tape. And you started with a career in nursing, which is known as a very stable career path. With usually pretty decent compensation, and but also I think known for burning people out at times. So can you maybe talk about kind of how, were you already investment minded when you started in your career, or did that develop over time?
Like you mentioned, I am Latina. I'm an immigrant actually too. So I immigrated here at age of 16, and from the beginning, I thought I was just going to end up in a W-2 job, and that was the dream, right? That just get into any kind of job with any kind of job security, contribute to your retirement accounts, and retire at 65. But I was a happy nurse. I loved nursing for 10 years, actually. So I did it for 10 years. And in 2020, everything changed for me because the pandemic hit. And I worked in Los Angeles, and I worked in one of the most trauma level 1 hospitals. So I was hit with immediately becoming a frontline care worker. And that was really hard on me. Not only because I was seeing people die every day, I just spiraled into a long depression. Then initially, I didn't see any upside whatsoever, but I did therapy and I started medication and all of that. It just turned my life around in a way that I had to make a change and leave nursing because I was no longer good for my health. So I decided to look up on Google how can I make money? I don't know anything else. I've been a nurse for 10 years. How can I make money? I was priorly investing in a 401k and a Roth IRA and the things I was supposed to do. But I have no entrepreneurship background, neither did my parents. So I definitely found real estate, and I was like, well, I already own a home. I already had my own primary home in LA. And I was already renting out rooms for travel nurses. So I'm doing it already. So why don't I just look for real estate deals and start buying rentals? So I looked at my backyard, and I live in LA. There's nothing that I could buy that I could put a 20% down payment for, which I thought at the time was the only way I could get into the rental market. So I was like, okay, I don't have $200,000 to buy $1 million house to rent it out for $3,000 to $4,000, which makes no cash flow. So I started looking at out of state, and that's how I ended up in my market.
Amazing. So much to unpack there. And I think, first of all, me as someone who's largely worked behind a computer for my career, yes, I worked in concerts, and so I'd be at shows and whatnot, but there is just for someone like me, I can only imagine what it must be like to work not only as a nurse, for a career, but in something like COVID. And so when you talk about the impact that had on you, and how you had to do a lot of deep work and reflection to figure out what you want to do moving forward, I applaud you for, first of all, being vulnerable and sharing that. And second, it sounds like that gave you the spark you needed to understand what you wanted the rest of your life to look like. So, and I think too, that one really interesting thing you said was your version of what living the dream is also evolved as an immigrant and someone who, has, you said initially the W-2 job and just a stable career was the dream. And then after doing it for a while, like your vision and what you want and your goals evolved to meet the moment. And I think, when I look at my life and my story, I think about there are these turning point moments. When I was on your show, I was sharing about some of the struggles I had and how that's what launched my real estate journey too. I think when you start with such a strong purpose and why, then it makes it a lot easier to do some of the harder work that has to be done. And then, you also mentioned that you were kind of almost an accidental landlord. And so it's like one of those things where the solution was almost hiding in plain sight for you, of you had already tried something out and seen what potential it could have. And then it was a matter of just figuring out, how do I do this again? So as far as investing goes, you came across the out-of-state idea pretty quickly. How did you figure out what your kind of next steps were?
First, I needed to, I knew that working as a nurse 12 hours every day, I cannot be on the phone. I cannot really solve problems when they arise. So I knew from the beginning, even if I was going to start investing local, that I needed a property manager. Because there's no way I can be ready when I'm in the hospital taking care of people. That was number one. And then next would be, I was a nurse. I was a traveler nurse. I could be able to travel to different states, which I was already doing, for contracts. So I could live somewhere else, house hack. And then so I started looking, I was like, okay, when would my next contract be, or where would it be? So I was like debating back and forth between going to Illinois or somewhere else that had a better like real estate market. So I was looking at Illinois, but it was, like I said, 2021, 2022 when I was looking, and there was a lot of evictions being paused and a lot of moratorium. Like I looked at Illinois and everybody was not paying rent. They were getting subsidized, right? And so I decided, in order to put another layer of security, I needed to go to a state that was more landlord friendly, in which I could feel more comfortable deploying my first investment money, my first down payment. So that's how I started looking at areas around Illinois. So I saw Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I saw Ohio. I saw Indiana. Like I saw all those neighboring lakefront markets. And then I started looking for people that were investing like me. They were trying to invest out of state because I didn't know anybody here. My circle does not invest in rentals, and I don't have family that are co-founders investing. So I went to the rabbit hole of Bigger Pockets, Real Estate Rookie, go online on YouTube, and I started looking at a lot of long-form real estate videos, and that's where I found Maskey Finance and Millennial Mike. They were investing in Gary, Indiana. And at the time, there were smaller creators like 2021, 2022. And then so they seemed to want to engage with the audience. So I just started liking every single video they posted, going back a year, liking those videos, commenting on every video. So they know I'm watching. And then after a few days of just stalking, I just started sending them messages saying hi, my name is Lindsay. I would like to find out what you're doing in the market, what's working, what's not, because both of these creators were completely transparent. And so they were putting their down payment and closing costs, the interest, they were accounting for every single thing that you could not foresee when you're going through a real estate transaction and putting it out there, good, bad, ugly. But the most important thing is that they were doing the cash flow that I could not find in other sides of the country. So that's why I ended up in Gary.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating journey. And I think you were pretty disciplined about it, because instead of settling for something, it sounds like you were exploring, where could I invest? And then you would learn one or two things about somewhere, and okay, maybe this is too tenant friendly environment, or the regulations don't support the type of business you need. And then you also mentioned at the beginning of your answer that, you knew that you probably couldn't be the one to manage it anyway. So if that's true, then what's stopping you from looking at other places around the country? I think a lot of people have a fear or an aversion to investing away from their home market because they assume that if they're not able to, drive down the street and touch the house or see the house, that everything's going to go wrong. But if you find the right network of other investors, team members such as property managers, agents, you can build a secure network and system to run and keep your rental properties going that doesn't depend on you. And that's honestly, who doesn't want that, right? Nobody wants to probably be super involved, especially if they're busy or if they have other things they want to do with their life. But you also mentioned something important, which is, the people you started following, they were very transparent and thorough, right? So a lot of people online, one of my big pet peeves is when I hear people talk about cash flow and they're like, well, it rents for $1,500 and my PITI mortgage payment is $1,000. So my cash flow is $500. I'm like, well, not really, right? Like you got to pay your manager, you allocate for your maintenance and your CapEx and various other expenses. So once you back all that out, it's actually more like probably 100. And so I think people sometimes get very loose with how they talk about their cash flow, and then also using the P word, passive, which I try not to use except under very specific circumstances. So I appreciate that what you called out, that the people you were following not only broke down the deals and showed, made the case for why that market was a good place to invest, but they did it with transparency so that when you finally did start investing there, you felt like you knew what you needed to know to make an informed decision. So did you start working directly with their team? Like, did they have an agent and property manager? Like, how did the actual process work once you decided to go with that market?
So initially, I was scared of Gary, because obviously it doesn't have the normal good economic markets that you would look for when you're like reading the books and doing all the research. And then also when I was talking to these creators, they were like, they were not like, calm down, you'll make a lot of money. It was more like, no, the cons and the pros of this market. Like, no, it's going to be challenging, but there's upside. So it wasn't like, oh, rosy glasses, like, oh, there's money here, let's go. So I was on the fence. So initially, actually, my first house was not in Gary. It was on a neighborhood called Hammond, which is west of Gary, which is just borderline Indiana and Illinois. Literally, there's a line. So the purchase price on that market when I was this much is higher, and taxes are higher, but there was a potential for cash flow still. Not like higher rates like Millennial Mike or Masky Finance were looking at, but it was over 7%. And that was like my fixation, to find cash flow over 7%, because I come from investing in the market, which averages 7 to 8%, passively, completely passive investing. So in my mind, I was like, if I'm working for it, if I'm doing this research, if I'm talking to people, if I'm like talking to realtor, if I'm working managers, it has to be 7 or higher if I'm working for it then. So I purchased a home in Hammond, which was $135,000. And that was in 2022. And it was rented the next week, because it was renting ready, and rented the next week that I purchased it. And yes, I fell into the team of Mark and Mike. So they had referrals for property managers, for had referrals for realtors, for having referrals for contractors. They have referrals for everything. And then so I talked to all of them individually, and then decided to go with one property manager, And so my network was almost already formed when I started investing. And that was, at the time, I didn't realize how resourceful that was. But later on, I realized I just basically fit in. I just got the shoe and it fit, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for the fact that you got referrals from an investor, directly from an investor who had success in that area. One of the biggest mistakes that we made when we did our first truly out-of-state investing was when we were researching markets. We went on BiggerPockets. We had consulted a couple different sites and blogs, but we didn't really talk to any of the investors that work with like the property manager or the agent that we hired. It was just a rookie mistake on our part. But investors are such an important check and balance, right? Like if Millennial Mike or any of these other guys were referring people and those people were doing a poor job, I imagine they wouldn't refer them anymore, right? So it gives an incentive to the property managers and agents and lenders to do good business and honest business. We had some pretty bad experiences with our property managers because there was no check and balance. And, frankly, it was our fault for not doing better due diligence. So I think what you did, where you had people that you were exposed to, you met them through their content and you built a relationship with them by interacting with them and you saw how they thought about their business. And then you went and why reinvent the wheel, right? You using the people that they've used to create those results. And now you get to work with them directly. To me, that's kind of the best playbook for finding an out-of-state market is find investors who have had success. If possible, work with the people that have helped deliver that success for them and don't try and, recreate things just for the sake of it, right? Just use what works. Do you feel the same way or am I missing something here?
Oh yeah, like why make it harder on yourself? Like, yeah, you probably could find another realtor and another property manager, but if you have knowledge of these property managers already working out, then why walk away from that? Like that's valuable information.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people think I'm full of crap when I say that I can operate and grow my portfolio in an average of 20 minutes per day. So instead of asking you to take my word for it, I sat down with my business partner, Nathan, and we ran through our entire 20-minute investor strategy in a free workshop. We go through all the different workflows, software, and tools we use to stay in control of our portfolios so we can focus on what matters most to us. You can watch the entire workshop and download our workflows for free at 20minuteinvestor.com. Again, that's 20minuteinvestor.com. Now back to the show. You mentioned at the top that kind of your background, your initial goals were to just find a stable job, and a lot of friends and family like didn't have any real estate background or understanding of what that looks like. So as you leaned into this identity and you started interacting with more investors, and this became your main thing and something that you're passionate about, what did that do to kind of your relationship with the people that you grew up around, like old friends, family? Like how did you find that created distance, or what did that kind of do to those dynamics?
Majority of the people actually in my family around me, they don't know that I invest heavily. So I wouldn't say that it's changed the way that the relationship that they have towards me, but my mindset has changed significantly. So when I used to talk about it a lot before, but I fell into that category of like, oh, you talking about real estate again? Like that's just boring and nobody wants to talk about it. But I think in my situation, it's a little bit different. My whole family is first generation immigrant and my parents are housekeepers. It's pretty hard for them to think about it in a way of like, it's wealth building and it's going to happen soon. It's more of like, oh, she's doing something, but we don't know if it's going to work out kind of thing.
Got it. But this is full-time now. Your focus is real estate at this point?
It's still a part-time. I have a full-time job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And so do you want that to be your full-time thing?
I think eventually it would take probably a full-time position, but I don't think I'll ever stop. So I became, not only did I become a real estate investor, also went back to school and got my graduate degree. I'm a nurse practitioner. So I work in a different setting. I'm not longer in the hospital. And I also I'm trying to build my business there too. So that has taken like a backseat almost, but it's going to be working at the same time. Like it's going to be both of them. It can't just be one.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate. First of all, I don't know that I could sit still long enough to do only like real estate stuff, because it's not actually that much work if you have the teams in place and you have, good systems. When you're finding deals, it can take time, but when you're doing, when you're operating, there's not that much active effort. And I feel like I would probably, at least personally, get bored. Plus, I'm curious to hear your take on this, but I believe that, having a job and income stream, it can be a major asset while you're building your base of real estate, because you can take that income and you can reinvest it, and it doesn't put as much dependence on the real estate to sustain you, and you can invest in a different way versus relying on rental cash flow to be the only thing that sustains you. Do you think that the balance of both is something that you value over the long term, or is it more of a means to an end?
No, since I stepped in for the last years, I stepped in a different role in my profession. I am a much happier person. And then so there's no urgency per se of like, I need to leave this job because I hate it or I can't handle it. That has changed my way of like, initially I was like, I need to get out of nursing. I need to find another way to be able to pay for my bills. But that has changed. Like I said, I think that not so much having an income, but just having the flexibility of being able to create the life that you want, regardless if it's from active income from the job or passive income from real estate. I don't think I'll ever not per se work, but I'll always be doing something productive, regardless of if it brings income or not.
Yeah. And I've noticed too that you've taken a more active role in general. Like you and I met through an online community, and you're even leaning in and helping other people figure out how to do out of state investing. Do you have a passion for paying it forward, or kind of what is inspiring you to kind of lean in and take those leadership roles and run the calls and work with other investors?
Honestly, it's the people that were doing it for me because I felt like this was a way out. Real estate was a way out and a way of being able to survive and live a meaningful life. And then so there are people out there that were putting out so much content for free that I wanted to also be that person that's like showing the way to other people, regardless if it's support or information or referrals or however I could get the information out to anybody. Also, I believe there's not a lot of women in real estate, and I feel like we have a disparity there, and I feel a little bit responsible for like being representation, being the representation, as well as being an immigrant, being Latina, and being somebody that's doing it with challenges.
Yeah, no, I appreciate when people lead by example too, right? Like you're showing that there's not really much of an excuse or reason why people can't do this if they don't, if they want to, right? If they have the drive and they are curious and willing to, tackle the learning curve, it's really not rocket science, right? It's just, I think a lot of people don't even understand or they're not aware that this
Yeah.
is an option, especially like people, you mentioned you're in Southern California. People there don't have any idea for the most part, unless somebody tells them that you can buy properties for, you mentioned your first rental was $135,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even a down payment in Southern California. So that's not even half a down payment in Southern California. And so I think there's a relativity piece too, where people, once they learn that, then all of a sudden it's intriguing. Like, oh, maybe instead of investing in the stock market, putting 100% of my money in the stock market, maybe I carve out a portion. And that's what I found with out of state investing in particular, is that people that live in these high cost of living areas, once they find out that that's an option, then it becomes intriguing. But so I think you're doing a good service by sharing what that path looks like, and then again leading by example.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The houses around here, when you think about it, it's like you put down so much money that you're locking up, but you don't have a house. You need somewhere to live. But it's in learning about real estate changes the way that you see housing in general. It doesn't become about building a home. It becomes about like a business, like you said, of building equity and doing smart choices for not for just you, but your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a type of long game or end game goal, or like what's your overarching vision for what you want to accomplish, like with real estate?
I want to live a very untraditional life. I want to move to a different country. I want to learn an additional language. I want to immerse myself in a different culture, and I want to be able to do that while I'm working, building something, and also having real estate investments.
I love it. So do you want to be nomadic or do you want to take permanent residence somewhere else?
I think nomadic, but more like 6 months somewhere, 6 months back. Because my family is very centralized here too, so that would be hard to let go.
Yeah. No, I have a similar. We have my wife and I have talked about several times, like taking mini retirements, or I think you and I both follow Chad Carson. He talks about his family. They've done that multiple times, where they've moved for 12 to 18 months to different areas. They put their kids in school locally in those countries. They learned Spanish, and like that just sounds so cool to be able to do that. And real estate's one of the few things that can produce enough income to enable that type of thing, especially if you're investing methodically and consistently over a period of time. So is Gary that's your primary market? Are you in other out of state markets too?
No, that's my only market. And I recently started building an ADU in my backyard in Los Angeles. I don't know how that's going to go, but the goal there is to make it a midterm rental. And like I said, I was a nurse. I used to rent out rooms to nurses. So I'm trying to see if I can fall back into that. And it feels hack a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that because you've experienced it as a traveling nurse, what people would look for, right? So you have a competitive edge when it comes to running a place like that versus someone like me who I don't know what that experience is like. So you're combining that locally with your out-of-state rentals, which are cash flow heavy. Is the goal to just kind of keep feeding the machine and as you can afford, continue to add properties, or are you trying to pay some down? What's your strategy with how you're growing your portfolio?
Not pay some down. Starting the ADU here is actually more expensive than having a rental portfolio out in Gary. So that's holding me back. But I wanted to grow more in Gary. Like right now, I have 10 rentals and maybe 20 rentals, which will bring me $67,000 a month in cash flow. So that paired with like house hacking, really, I will pay for more than my lifestyle here. Then I would like to think that I would go into like that untraditional life, nomadic lifestyle of living in different countries. But who knows? I might reserve the right to change my mind. Maybe I'll like start fixing and flipping. It depends. But I really think that real estate is all so consuming and so exciting, but I also want to be consumed by other things in life as well as other passions. So it may change.
Yeah, I've come to view it as, there's these different sprints and different like phases for building. So, we bought our entire single family portfolio in the course of about a little over 3 years. And then we didn't buy properties for almost 3 years after that, right? So that sprint when we were first buying stuff and refinancing and saving up money, and it was a lot, it was a very tiring process to do all that because each time we were building new teams, we were stabilizing a new house, finding new tenants, and it can be tiring. And at some point, you don't necessarily want to be doing that all the time. I know for us, when we had kids, that's when our situation kind of changed to where I didn't want to be self-managing anymore. Like my wife and I both, like we still were working and we had kids all of a sudden, and we wanted to be present and enjoy time with them. So that's been an interesting change for us, is like, okay, how you can't just permanently sprint and sprint and sprint forever. Like you have to take a pause to enjoy your life along the way. And especially one thing I like about your portfolio is that you didn't do what we did, which I wouldn't recommend, which is we have 3 different markets, which means we have 3 different teams, 3 different sets of regulations. It's a lot more to keep track of in your head. And even if you have good teams, things could change at any point. Whereas being in one market where you can really focus on, do I have the right people in the right seats? You probably can pull back and not be as involved over time because you know the market well enough and your team knows the market well enough. And it's just less things to focus on, which allows you, like you said, to go and enjoy the rest of your life and, not spend 100% of your time working or fueling your real estate. So with your free time, are there things that you like want to lean into or things that you're passionate about outside of real estate that you're hoping to focus more on in the future?
Yeah, I work in mental health, and I eventually, I don't know when this is going to be, but like open up a nonprofit for people to get access to mental health services. That would be a dream. Uh, That's just one of my dreams. I am a daughter of immigrants, and my parents are getting older, and I would like to help them retire already. That's a goal of mine. But those are two things that I like probably would want to focus on in the next 5 years or so. I don't think financial freedom is so far. I live a very modest life. I live below my means. I do have a house in LA, but I'm trying to house hack, and I'm one of those lucky people that were able to refinance their house in 2020. So I have a low interest rate, a low mortgage payment. So I don't think, like, what the Coach Carson always says, like, what is enough? Like, enough for me is not that big. So for me, it is really about living a meaningful life, spending time with my family as long as I can. And I think just growing up in nursing or becoming an adult while being a nurse just put into priority of what actually is important in your life. And that's not cars or houses or being able to travel via private jet. It's actually little things that you do have, like your partner, your family, like in your case, your kid, spending time with them, being present for the actual little failures and small wins that they have. Like, that's actually what's important for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think about some of my happiest moments, and a lot of them were at my house or on a normal day where I just had a nice, day with my wife or went out and played with the kids. And like, those are the moments when I'm happiest. They don't require $1 million. They don't require bottle service at the nightclub or the private jets, right? It's just about, having the freedom and flexibility to spend time with the people we love and do things that make us happy, right? And that, depending on what you're into, that doesn't cost all that much. It's to me, one thing I've learned more recently is that financial pressure, right? Like it makes it harder to enjoy the moment. So when we had 3 kids in 3 years, like we went from having a pretty relatively easier financial life to now all of a sudden our expenses ballooned like crazy, and it forced us to make a lot of changes. And just the pressure of like figuring out how to balance that equation made it harder for us to be happy on a day-to-day basis. So to me, it's like, it's less about, can I make enough money to just do whatever I want? And it's more about, how can I just remove that pressure so that, we know that there's enough safety net. We can actively save, we can actively invest. And we know we have a safety net so that we're never going to have to worry about like where our next meal comes from or how we're going to pay our bills, right? Like removing that pressure allows us to live the life we want. And then from there, there's not that much more, at least in my mind, that we really need. No, I appreciate that perspective a lot. And the other thing, I want to ask, maybe you've thought of this, maybe you haven't, but you talked about a couple different ways of giving back. One was to your parents, and one was, people suffering with various types of mental health. What would that look like to you? Are you interested in like forming a nonprofit and providing like services, or have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, we talk about it with one of my friends. She's also like me. She's Mexican American, and she is getting her NP for medical, so primary care NP. So we were talking that she lives in Texas, and there's a lot of things that happen in Texas. So especially regarding medical care for women and children. So she has like a lot of acreage in her house over there. So putting up something that she has primary care throughout the week, and I can like fly in maybe 2 weekends of the month and then do that with her. That would be something that we can partner up with. And then she would like that to be her full time. Like that will be her ideal dream. But I do have a lot of friends in the medical field, so I don't think it would be so difficult to start something, even if it's mobile, like medical care and on the go kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. And so the medical field is an interesting place where I feel like the people that work in healthcare, they have big hearts, they have attitude and desire to serve and help people, which is amazing, right? That's something that not everyone has. I don't think I do think most people are probably more focused on outcomes for themselves than, providing service. But I also think that a lot of people in healthcare they are busy, and it's subject to burnout. And there's a subset of people that work in healthcare that I know that focus on investment. And then there's a lot of people I've heard about that are just too busy and they're tunnel vision. They go to work and then they come home and then they don't have energy to focus on anything else. So what do you think, is some advice you might give to people who work in a medical profession who, they make good income, but they maybe haven't thought yet about how, they would fit investing into their lives?
Do what they can. There's thought. Everyone is different. So some people do need to work every day. Some people do need to wake up at 5 in the morning and work for 12 hours. Like they don't feel purpose or motivation if they don't do that. So I seen it's a very distinct personality that does that. And then some people are emotional and intuitive. And so there's things like hardships that you see every day that really affect you. And that creates burnout. And then that combined with like shortage in the hospital, shortage in the clinic, and then all of that will consume you, will burn you out, like we say. So acknowledging that you need time off. Like a lot of people are so hesitant to even take days off for thinking they're not going to make money or whatever they think they can allow themselves to. But self-care is very, very important. And if you don't take care of yourself, your body will let you know, because you will get sick. You will get sick mentally, you will get sick physically. So before that happens, because it will happen, just do what you can. Like I used to be into fire. I used to be on invest in your 401k if you can. Invest in Roth IRA if you can't. If you don't feel like you're capable of doing real estate investing, which look into it before you decide not to go that route. Maybe you can become a lender so you don't have to be active. Maybe you become a partner, like equity partner, so you don't have to do the day-to-day things, but you are diversifying your portfolio, because regardless of what you're doing, you're wanting to create that generational wealth. You're wanting to leave whatever children you have what you want, right? So this will help that. Like Super says, and Michael Super says, you just get to 4 or get to 1. It doesn't really matter. It matters for you, for your family, what you're going to leave behind.
No, I love that perspective. And I think, Michael Zuber always talks about if you can get to 4 and only 4 houses, that could accomplish 99% of people's financial goals will be solved, just in those 4 houses. If you buy them at reasonable prices, operate them well, and just let time do its trick. And I think part of the problem that a lot of people have is that they focus so much on what's the result I get in year 1. Well, in year 1, even if you buy a house really well at a good price and you run it well, it still probably is only making a few $100 a month in cash flow for a standard single family rental. And that is somewhat difficult in today's market in most places across the country. But over the course of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the rents typically do increase. Your loan amortization as you're paying it down accelerates, and the price appreciates as well. So I think it's one of those things where I forget, Zuber also says it's the first 5 years basically just suck, right? You might make some cash flow, but most of it's going to get reinvested back into maintenance and CapEx and all that type of stuff. And that can be disheartening, especially if you're a doctor or somebody that makes a few $100,000 a year. And you're like, well, what is this piddly $5,000 going to do for me? It's not necessarily what is it going to do for me today. It's what is it going to do for me in the future. Some people talk about accelerating, loan pay down so that they can target a specific year. If you know you want to retire in 20 years or 15 years, you can accelerate your loan pay down so that when you retire, you have a paid off asset. There's so many different things you can do, but it's about like zooming out and looking at the time horizon and what can happen over a long period of time. It can benefit not only you, but generations to follow, like you said. So that's really sound advice for the healthcare professionals. And also they don't have to be the ones running the show. They can invest passively or lend money, like you said. Well, Lindsay, what if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do or ask you for some advice on out of state investing? Where can they find you to do?
If you find me on Instagram, TikTok, I finally made a TikTok, and on YouTube, Lynn Does Investing, all of them. So if you LIN Does Investing, you can contact me. I usually give out my email if you want to email me, ask me questions. I'm totally open. I do have a full-time job, so it might take a few days for me to get back to you, but I will get back to you.
Yes, I think the listeners of this show understand the eternal juggling act of working full-time and trying to invest on the side. So yeah, give all of us some grace on response times. But Lindsay does have an incredible YouTube channel. She's go-giver, totally focused on helping other people experience the same benefits that she's been able to realize through real estate. And I'm grateful for you taking some time to come on the show. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. It was wonderful.
Yes, we'll do it again soon.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.